I just hit the stop recording on the jogging video, and I just hit the start recording on this Chernobyl video. Brennan, just in case you didn't hear it on the last video, I am going to be doing your happiest memory video that you suggested to me soon, so stay tuned for that. Suggestions, just so you guys know, I don't know if I'll do the next day, but I will do them eventually, within at least a week or 2 weeks. So, stay tuned for that if you ever suggest something, that you're always going to get that content, just so you know. Chernobyl. I don't know what the title of this video is going to be, because I was thinking about, I wanted to record this video at work yesterday. I was wanting to do this. I'm going to maybe call it my bucket list, what I want to go to Chernobyl or something. I don't know. But this is about Chernobyl. If you guys don't know what Chernobyl is, in Pripyat, Ukraine, on 1986 April sometime, I forget the date, sorry, that's a bit unprofessional, but in 1986 sometime in April, I believe, at around 1:35, 1:40 in the morning, nuclear reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. And as a result, it sent graphite everywhere, super radioactive graphite, and basically turned Pripyat into a ghost town. It's been featured in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. There's a mission you do in that where you're in Chernobyl, in Ukraine, in Pripyat. And Chernobyl is always very intriguing to me. I remember watching my very first video on the elephant's foot, or maybe a video in like 2013 on Chernobyl, and I always thought of Chernobyl as just a city that was abandoned because of a nuclear accident. In the back of my head, I knew the nuclear plant exploded and whatnot, but I never really took into consideration that that plant still sits there to this day, and that that plant was the cause of it all. Like, it's a hard feeling to explain, but like, I always just saw pictures and videos of the town. I never saw pictures of the reactor. And when I saw pictures and videos of the reactor, that's when things all changed, because I am obsessed with Chernobyl, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the unknown factor of it, maybe it's the mysteriousness of it, maybe it's the fact that as we sleep in the middle of the night, it stands there, the reactor never to move, and it just lost in time and history. It's a very cool thing to think about. So my bucket list, as you see by the title, whatever it's going to be called, I want to go to Chernobyl. I'm not asking for a crowd fund. I'm not asking for you to donate money. I'm not asking you to send money to my PayPal or my bank or whatever, or donations in the mail. Not asking for any of that. I'm just simply going to talk about Chernobyl and what I want to do. I watched, my fascination for Chernobyl randomly came back one day when it was day shift at my work, and I wanted to listen to something. I always have my headphones in listening to music or listening to vlogs or listening to the people talk. And I wanted to listen to a fact list or like a story of Chernobyl on YouTube. So I pulled up a video, listened to the audio, and I got fascinated. And like a month later, I watched the HBO series Chernobyl, and I absolutely got so obsessed. So Chernobyl is always like, now it's always a thing. I want to go to Chernobyl. I want to go to Pripyat. I want to buy the tickets to go with some friends to go visit Chernobyl. And my honest dream would be to go into Reactor 4. If I could go into the new safe confinement and go into the actual reactor, that's the top of my bucket list. Skydiving doesn't beat it. Almost going to outer space doesn't beat it. I want to go to Chernobyl. So, a little bit of history about Chernobyl before I talk more. What happened was there's basically a design flaw in the RBMK reactor, which is basically the essentialness of Reactor 4. The RBMK reactor is what makes the power, generates the power, gives lights to the city, electricity and whatnot, and that's what powers the city and whatnot. The reactors do all the work. And so there was a design flaw in the RBMK reactor model, the RBMK model reactor that they used. I think they definitely used it in Reactor 4, but I don't know if they used it in 1, 2, and 3 or whatnot. Maybe, I don't know. Now, prior to Chernobyl, if you didn't know, there was a minor meltdown of another reactor at the same reactor plant before Chernobyl ever happened. It's just a minor one. I think a few people got sick. I don't think anyone died. I'm not sure. I don't want to spew misinformation. But Yeah. I'm trying to think of what to say. So, then Chernobyl happened, and the RBMK had a fatal flaw. The RBMK model reactor had a fatal flaw with the, I forget what the flaws were, but I know one was the AZ5, which is it A35 translated to English? AZ5 is a button that you push in the event that the reactor becomes catastrophic and everything is going to hell. Like real bad. Like everything going to shit. That is what you press to stop the reaction all at once. AZ5, which I think translates to A35, I think, in English. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there were more design flaws in the RBMK reactor. So what happened was they were running a test one night at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the test went sour, and they could not stop the reaction from building. You know, the big fatal error was I think they pulled all the control rods out at once, which control rods have graphite tips that greatly increase reactivity and whatnot. So I forget what control rods do. I'm very rusty on this, but anyway, control rods are a very crucial part of a reactor system. So as they noticed the reaction getting worse and worse, they started pulling control rods out, and they're these huge, heavy, really big, like just basically concrete rods about this wide and just 7-8 feet tall, maybe. And they started pulling them out to slow the reaction because graphite tips increase reactivity, so they pull them out to decrease it. That just made everything way worse, and they started noticing the radiation levels just absolutely skyrocketing. But before that, they dipped real low to a point of just absolute just terribleness. Like, it just greatly lowered the power level, and everything was going to crap. And then they decided, okay, we pulled all these control rods out, and everything's starting to freak out. The pipes are starting to jiggle and everything. They didn't know that, but they just knew everything was going to hell. Everything was just absolutely going to hell. So what they did was they decided, okay, let's just put all the control rods back in to see if that stops the reaction. In a moment of just thoughtlessness and stupidity, they put all the control rods in with the graphite tips that increase reactivity. And you imagine all these graphite tips going in at once into the tank, into the reactor. That made the process skyrocket. The whole reactivity just skyrocket, and as a result, it blew up. Just absolutely huge explosion as a result of the graphite tips and all the RBMK flaws and everything just not working together, and it just blew up. And it's crazy to think that that's what caused Chernobyl to be abandoned now, and just to think that explosion, if you could slow down time and just stare at the explosion, just this non-moving ball of fire, that is what would later cause Pripyat to be abandoned, and years later, new safe confinement to be built, and these people doing tours. Just to think that that explosion, freezing down time and just staring at it, knowing that that's what caused it, is crazy to think about. So that's basically just a design flaw and error, human error, led to the catastrophe of Reactor 4. Enough about history now that you kind of know about it. Basically, also, before I get into it, what I want to do and stuff, it completely blew up the reactor. It sent graphite everywhere, the super radioactive graphite. You could only be around the graphite on the roof that exploded on the roof and everywhere a total of a minute before. I mean, if you were up there for like 30 seconds, you die without any protection. If you picked it up with your hand, that's millions of x-rays running through you, and you're gonna die. Like, just picking it up and holding it, you're gonna die. Crazy to think about. Watch the series. I watched the HBO series, and you watch a firefighter pick up a big chunk of graphite just to know he's holding the last thing he'll probably ever hold, and he's holding just something that looks so harmless. It's not making a noise. It's not notifying you somehow that it's dangerous. It's just silent, and it's killing you. Crazy to think about. Anyway, now what I want to do, or what I want to talk about. So they built around, after they put a bunch of boron and sand, dumping it on the reactor 4 to hopefully slow the process. That actually increased it because the sand would melt and the concrete would melt, and it created this magma that was leaking into the water pipe system. Super hot magma to the point if it touched the water in the water pipes or the tanks, it would cause an explosion that would send more radiation into the water supply of the river of Pripyat and whatnot, and would just contaminate other countries, and would just other countries and other places thousands of kilometers away would have to be evacuated too. Other countries, and because if that happened, it would have been much worse. And it didn't happen. They stopped it, but eventually as time went on and the cleanup efforts happened, they eventually decided to build this sarcophagus around the reactor 4, the whole plant, the nuclear power plant, reactor 4 and reactor 4. Just this basically this huge concrete enclosement, this big tomb that they put concrete all around the structure. So it was the shape of the structure, and it looked like it was the shape of the reactor and the plant, and it looked like the plant. It was just covered in concrete. So imagine the exact shape and structure of the plant just covered in concrete. It looked funny. So they did that just to slow reactivity and radiation from leaking into the air and to contaminating more things. And that was kind of its first grave, its first tomb. And they were slowly putting the reactor and the plant under, and crazy to think about. So then, over the years, the concrete sarcophagus, since it was made of concrete, started to deteriorate. Rust and concrete was breaking down. It was falling in large chunks. It was destroying more of the reactor, more of the plant. It was falling on top of things, crushing things. Just wasn't a good thing. So I think in the early 2000s or in the 90s, they started to design the new safe confinement, which is really cool to think about. In the 90s, the design of the new safe confinement and the arch would not be put over the plant until 2017, years and years later. Really cool to think about that they had that design plan so early. So the new safe confinement was basically a replacement for, if you want to call it, the old safe confinement, which was the concrete sarcophagus that they put over the reactor. So the new safe confinement was basically this huge overarching structure that would cover not only the plant and the reactor, but a whole bunch of land around it too. Imagine putting a house inside of a football field and then covering the entire football field with a dome. So you walk in, the new safe confinement is basically just huge metal overarching structure that is now in place over the plant and the reactor. And it took weeks to slide. It's the largest movable, I think it's the only movable structure in the world that is like a covering or something. The largest movable structure in the world. Took weeks to just slowly push it over the plant and the reactor and then close it down, and it sits today, just this huge dome. Really crazy to look at, to think that the reactor is under there and it'll never see the light of day again. The reactor and the plant are just sitting there under that arch, never to be seen by humans again, except unless you work there, or you work as a worker, or you work as a scientist, that you can only go and get access inside of it. Because normal visitors will never see the plant again. Like if you take tours to Pripyat, you can only see the new safe confinement. You can't really see the old sarcophagus, the concrete, which is what I like more about it, is that you can still see the plant. But it's safer for the environment, the new one, so that's always better, you know. Screw what other people want to see. It's a matter of how healthy and long the Earth's going to last. So the new safe confinement was put over, and it is the craziest thing to look at when you see videos of people going inside, because you think of going inside, you think of the new safe confinement, the arch spanning just width to width, foot to foot of the reactor. When I first saw the new safe confinement, I thought the arch and everything was it was molded to the plant and the reactor. Like the arch and its width and diameter and length, circumference, whatever, was the exact measurements of the plant. I didn't know that when you walk in the new safe confinement, there sits a whole bunch of land and then the huge power plant and the reactor. The power plant and the reactor, it's in the middle of this huge arch. It's the craziest thing to look at. It's like, imagine putting the Sears Tower or the Eiffel Tower inside of a dome. It's the craziest thing to look at because you're used to seeing a sky over it. All you see over the power plant and the reactor is just a big metal arch. It's so crazy to look at. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know what I like about it, why I like it so much. It's just cool. To think that it's permanently enclosed in that new safe confinement is really, really cool to think about. I love it. But yeah, you walk in, it's not, the new safe confinement is not the exact shape and it's not the exact dimensions of the reactor and the plant. It's not molded to the size of it. It spans way more land than it should, and it covers way more land and ground than the actual plant. So when you walk in, you're walking on dirt and stuff, and then you see the reactor, and you got to walk a good ways inside the new safe confinement before you even get to the plant. It's the weirdest thing to look at. Look up pictures. It's crazy. But you know, it's the one thing I liked about the old sarcophagus better was that visitors. I don't know when they started doing tours. I don't think you could see it later in like 2015, 16, the old sarcophagus, but back in the 90s, I don't think they did tours because the radiation levels were still too dangerous. But you know, visitors back in 2015 and whatnot, whenever they first started doing the tours, you could see the old sarcophagus. That's the only thing I really liked about the old sarcophagus, is you could actually still see the plant. Now you can only see the new safe confinement, which is just this dome. It's still cool. It's still cool to think that the plant is still under there. It's still cool to think that everything, the remnants of the past, are still in there permanently, like clothing and just objects and the elephant's foot, which is really cool to think about. Go look up the elephant's foot. Really, really cool thing. Basically, this object, this mass of nuclear waste that would kill you if you stood by it by like 30 seconds to a minute back then. Not really lethal that much anymore. Still lethal, but you have to stand by it for a good amount of time for it to be lethal. But that's really on my bucket list, is I want to go to Chernobyl, and I want to see those things, and I want to experience what that's like. And I don't think in my lifetime we're going to be able to go in the plant. I hope that, like, eventually in the next 100 years or whatever, when it's safe, you can go inside the plant for a long time and look around and tour the plant. I don't think you can tour the inside of the plant yet. I think you have to work there to do that, to actually be inside of it. But you can go on Google Earth. You can use the little look inside thing to see inside of the plant and move the camera around, which is very, very, very cool. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I just love Chernobyl. I'm obsessed with it. So Brennan, Mantor, my girlfriend, everyone that's watching this, whoever, Josh, Ashley, if you all want to go to Chernobyl eventually sometime in the future, let me know, because that is on the top of my bucket list and it would be awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this little talk. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one, guys. I will see you later. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you want to. Unsubscribe, dislike, I don't care. I will see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys. I actually do care. Subscribe.